Salute Knicks Nation. The streets are buzzing. Off-season mayhem is underway and the Knicks coaching search continues. An extensive coaching search. Got a lot of people rattled in the NBA landscape. What are the Knicks doing? People saying they don't have a plan. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about the latest with the chat, Q&A, as we get through a lot of news tonight. Players in the trade wins linked, the Knicks denying interest in Kevin Durant, and so much to chop up. Ladies and gentlemen, great to have you with us. Let us know your thoughts in the chat. We shout you out. Replay squad, salute. Smash that like button. We've got the Knicks streets buzzing. And the NBA draft is around the corner. We'll talk about that as well. And of course, we've got to start with the latest in the New York Knicks coaching search. They've requested permission to talk to so many coaches, right? And it's got a lot of people riled up, rattled. And, right now the New York Knicks are doing their due diligence first. And I guess we've got to start here. And I'll also talk about my thoughts on the situation with James Dolan and the Thibodeau wash-up, the aftermath of the firing of Tom Thibodeau. Thibodeau is officially on Twitter, X, formerly known as Twitter. And of course, he took out a big farewell thank you message page in the New York Times today to thank the New York Knicks fans and his experience coaching the Knicks as well. We'll talk about that. But I want to talk about what I've heard about James Dolan and his input in that situation, that decision to move on from the head coach, and why we're in this situation right now. There's a lot of, speculative and just nonsense flying around the online world in that situation. But of course, the coaching search is well underway, and basically the New York Knicks are inquiring about coaches, inquiring with teams that have coaches employed because, right, you start at the top of your list, ladies and gentlemen. You don't start at the bottom. You start at the top, and you want to find out who is or isn't available before you start to conduct some interviews, ladies and gentlemen. And there's so many names being thrown around, and it'll continue because the Knicks want to leave no stone unturned. Some familiar names, familiar faces are going to pop up. Mike Woodson, the latest, talking about Ian Begley earlier today. He went on Knicks Film School, talked about that Mike Woodson is a name that could have a conversation with the Knicks. James Edwards III has talked about Taylor Jenkins and Mike Brown are names to watch out for as well. But we will start with the Knicks inquiring with coaches that have a role right now with the current team and being denied. And a lot of people are sinking the boot into the situation of the Knicks having a vacant head coach. Rival fans, like I said, shook. Knicks for clicks right now. But before we get into that, great to see you guys in the building. Al Tango, Daniel Berry, Walter Blackman, I'm doing great. Salute to you, Buzzer Beater, AP in the house. Let's talk about it, guys. Let us know your thoughts on some of the names linked as I get through it. But it seems like, obviously, the New York Knicks have a huge interest in Jason Kidd still. That hasn't changed. But the thing that has changed is that the Dallas Mavericks have officially, through channels, through the media, put out that they've basically denied the New York Knicks access to an interview with Jason Kidd. But there's some people still in the media leaving that door open because the Knicks will obviously have Jason Kidd at the top of their list. And like I said, you start at the top, ladies and gentlemen. You work your way down. I'm cool with the J Kidd interest. Obviously, there's so many links and relationships with J Kidd, with the Brunsons, him being the runner-up last time the Knicks were looking for a coach 6 years ago. The way people are carrying on, man, you'd think that the Knicks have been looking for coaches every few years, but it's been 6 years since the Knicks conducted a thorough coaching hire, a search, and it was quite fruitful finding Tom Thibodeau. And now we do it all again, hoping to take that next step, looking for a fresh voice. And obviously, we'll talk about the Thibodeau wash-up later. As I said, he thanked the Knicks fans in a farewell message as well, which I thought was classy. But today, the most recent names linked: Taylor Jenkins, Mike Brown. Mike Woodson, obviously, as I said earlier, but Mike Brown is a guy that, you know, I think the Knicks are looking to maximize their offense, and I think they're looking for coaches that had success out west, maybe in more of an up and down system, coaching you know, a big time point guard. De'Aaron Fox, Mike Brown got a lot of success coaching a good offense with a speedy De'Aaron Fox. Also, you had Taylor Jenkins, had success with a Ja Morant before their front office and things got, crazy with the meddling, and Taylor Jenkins was forced to change his offense. I think they're solid names. I really like the fact that the Knicks are really looking for an experienced coach, and I think that's what I'm getting out of this situation, right? It's not the Knicks are just messing about, trying to contact all of these head coaches with teams. It's they value the experience, right? You let Tom Thibodeau go, and I'm going to talk a little bit about Johnny Bryant right now because it seems like the Knicks value, a guy that's been there, done that before as well. It remains to be seen how much, of a look in Johnny Bryant is going to get, but basically, recently, his name seems to be fallen a little bit in the pecking order in terms of the Knicks valuing that experience. Jay Kidd, obviously Mike Brown, Taylor Jenkins. You're hearing the Knicks inquiring about Chris Finch being denied by the Timberwolves, Quinn Snyder being denied by the Atlanta Hawks, and of course Jason Kidd being denied by the Dallas Mavericks. Ime Udoka, a name at the very top of the Knicks list as well. We got J Kidd, Ime Udoka as well. But of course, the Houston Rockets have no interest in allowing Ime to speak to the New York Knicks. Now, that doesn't mean they're not interested. It's their teams, their employers have no interest in letting those guys go, right? But I credit the Knicks for obviously starting at the top of their list, right? It's very easy to just assume in this day and age that somebody is unattainable, but you never know, man. You lose 100% of the shots you don't take, ladies and gentlemen. And if you want what you want, you go after it. And if they say no, then you move down to the next guy, right? As I said tonight, we'll talk about Kevin Durant, Giannis Antetokounmpo, some updates. National media Shams seems to be putting the New York Knicks name in teams interested. But the New York Knicks media, Steve Popper included, downplaying that the New York Knicks have no interest in trading for a Kevin Durant. So we're seeing some conflict. The Knicks name being used as leverage, I would assume, in most of these situations. But Giannis Antetokounmpo does seem that the noise is that he's really wanting to stick it out in Milwaukee, right? Maybe a leverage play as well to try to get as much as they possibly can. But there does seem to be more legs that Giannis wants to stay in Milwaukee. What are your thoughts on that? Great to see Shez V, Johnny in the house. Sharp Powers, salute from Knicks Real Talk. Families in the building tonight. Knicks Nation, great to have you with us on this live stream. Get your questions, comments, thoughts in. How are you feeling right now? Right, like I said, there's a lot of people rattled with this situation, but I want to shout out James L. Edwards III because some very rational coverage coming out of him in terms of the Knicks. There's no other vacancy right now. The Knicks don't feel the need to rush into this coaching hire right now. That's why you see them canvassing the league, seeing who is available and who isn't, before they start to conduct interviews as well. So, right. And also credit Chris Persianen covering the New York Knicks for Clutch Points, talking about that the Knicks are open to exploring, collegiate coaching candidates as well, right? Obviously, Danny Hurley's name's been thrown around, but I think the Knicks are working down, obviously, from their preference. And I think they want a guy that's been there and done that, been in the trenches. And I agree with that, right? I would definitely give heavy consideration to Johnny Bryant because there's a lot of boxes he ticks. He's been around the organization, he's been with the players, he knows the situation. I would definitely give him an interview. Johnny Bryant deserves an interview for the job. However, I would personally value, and I do think the Knicks value the experience of a former head coach in the NBA, right? We're not really a play-in team. We're not a team that's, hoping to make noise in the playoffs. There's expectations, man. There's heavy expectations coming in to next season, and a guy that's going to be in that seat needs to be proven, tested, been through the rumor mill, maybe been around the block, and is experienced in this game. Obviously, the New York market, man, is like no other. And I feel like Mike Brown is built tough. He would command attention, he would assume respect. Taylor Jenkins, I think, could impress in an interview as well. But yeah, I don't think the door is shut on J Kidd. Obviously, there's some reporting coming out that the Dallas Mavericks are the ones shutting things down, but not J Kidd's reps or, the Jason Kidd camp. So we'll see if the Knicks can worm their way into maybe Jason Kidd forcing an issue. It could get a little messy, but if J Kidd truly is that guy that Leon Rose and the front office really, really want, then I like their persistence. Like I said before, man, leave no stone unturned. Just be persistent. Be prepared for this thing to go longer than maybe some people hoped or expected. Juan V says, what about Mark Jacks? That name's obviously out there a lot. As Buzzabita says, Mark Jackson comes with a lot of baggage for some. I do think he has a lot of support from obviously some of the former players around the league. A guy that's, whether it's fairly or unfairly been blackballed, he's a guy that obviously has ties to the organization. I think with Mark Jackson, I think it's a case of it's tricky when you've been out of the circle and out of the league for a minute. It is really hard to get back in, to consideration. We'll see. I won't be surprised if the Knicks give him consideration in terms of an interview. But I don't think he would be, among the top, 5 to 10 guys on their mind. But who knows? Because these guys want to let the whole process play out. They want to interview guys. They want to see who impresses, and let the process play out. But in terms of Mike Woodson, you could sort of put him in the same category as a Mark Jackson, a guy that's well credentialed, had success in the league as a coach, but has been out of the circle for a minute. I think relationships are key with Woodson. There's respect with James Dolan for what he did, obviously before the firing, before Phil Jackson came in. But I don't see Mike Woodson being heavily considered. We'll see how that plays out. But obviously, if Ian Begley's saying that there's legs to that, then I'll definitely pay more attention. Mike Woodson, more of a ISO heavy offense, so I don't know how great of a fit that would be right now, but I do like Mike Woodson's defense. Obviously, had success with the 2013 New York Knicks with Carmelo, with Camby, JR, and those guys as well. When JR won the six man, a great players coach, hard nosed as well. But we'll see. There's been some collegiate coaches being linked as well. Some people are talking about maybe a Kelvin Sampson could get consideration as well as a Danny Hurley when it comes to some collegiate coaches. But yeah, I think with Jason Kidd, with Quinn Snyder, with Chris Finch, Emi Udoka, Those guys, that's just the New York Knicks inquiring. They're not putting all their eggs in that basket. Believe you me. It's called due diligence, but yeah, it's got a lot of people rattled. Like I said, maybe fans of those clubs, people that just hate on the Knicks. You know, they love to make a living hating on the New York Knicks because the Knicks live rent free, and obviously the Knicks are conducting a search. In terms of people criticizing the Knicks for firing Thibodeau and then conducting a search, well, I don't really give that any credence because basically the New York Knicks have over 100 days at least before they play a meaningful game of basketball, right? So what's the rush? And also you can't really keep Thibs in the role and be conducting searches around him, behind his back, right? That's pathetic. No one does that, right? If you believe the coach ain't the one for you to take this club forward, you make the decision, you cut ties, and then you move on. You conduct a thorough search, basically. I don't understand why people are thinking that the Knicks should be keeping Thibs and then having guys lined up because it's going to get out. It's going to get out. Imagine you're the head coach and you find out that the club is interviewing coaches and lining up coaches behind your back. That would be even worse, in my opinion. So I'm okay with what the New York Knicks are doing. Yes, it's taken up a lot of the headlines, and obviously the New York Knicks love to take up the headlines because of the national media. But the thing is, they love to criticize Thibodeau when he was in the job. But as soon as the Knicks fire him, you see all these people come out of the woodwork to try to defend Tom Thibodeau. And obviously, people hate to see somebody lose their job. But when it comes to this ball club, right, they obviously have a strong reason. And I want to get to that right now as well. As we shout you guys out in the building, I see you. Juan V says Patino. Buzzer beater says Mike Woodson. You like that name? You like the name of Mike Woodson? AP says that's right. Thibodeau gets replaced. They get criticized, but no one said anything about the Lakers when they fired Darvin Ham. Yeah. Also, last year, the Phoenix Suns inquired about Chauncey Billups with the Portland Trailblazers. They shut it down, but nobody cared. Nobody cared at the time. It's only because of the New York Knicks right now. When it comes to the decision made about Thibodeau, I tweeted this out last week. Basically, the rumblings of a James Dolan meddling situation are definitely off base. James Dolan was involved in the exit interviews, but for a very, very good reason, and a reason most owners, if not every single owner, will get involved in, and that is when you just extended a coach less than 12 months ago and you have to pay out $30 million. Now, when it comes to that situation, there's a lot of cooks in the kitchen with the Knicks front office, right? Obviously, it starts at the top. You got Dolan, you got Leon, and you got Wes. Leon and Wes, they're a duo, right? They come up together. They're together, basically, in sync, in lockstep. If one feels more strongly about something than the other one, it's normally with the blessing of the other one. They'll obviously not see eye to eye on every single thing. They'll debate, they'll discuss. But when it comes to the decision to move on from the coach, there were concerns widespread across the entire front office, including Brock Aller, Gerson Rosas, trickled down to the players we know, and obviously Rick Brunson, I'm told as well, was on board, with a change from his perspective as well, a fresh change needed. But ultimately, it got kick-started because Leon and Wes was the most vocal. Obviously, William Wesley's voice, powerful in the front office, especially with James Dolan. But Wesley was driving the bus, from what I'm told. Wesley was relentless in, communicating his desire to to switch up the coach. And obviously Leon Rose was for the decision as well. But where I said it gets tricky is, Leon made the decision to extend Thibodeau less than 12 months ago after last season, right? And so when it comes to Dolan, that's where Dolan gets involved. It's a bit awkward when you obviously extended the coach and then a year later you have to communicate that that is no longer the coach that you see as best fit. And that requires a $30 million payout. And so Dolan is going to be, rightfully so, he's going to ask questions, right? If your partner or your kid comes to you and say, hey, I got this problem, but it's going to take $30 million for the problem to go away, you're going to be perked up. Are you not? You're going to be asking serious questions. You're going to be wanting to know, okay, what's the situation? And so James Dolan, sat in on these exit interviews to hear from the players, the concerns. Understandably, with Wesley, he's obviously well connected to all the players and player circles as well. And that's where a lot of the concerns stemmed from. But obviously with Wesley communicating to Dolan, and then Leon and Dolan sitting in on these interviews, it became clear that the best course of action was to move on from Thibodeau and then move on and find another coach. So the whole Dolan meddling thing is definitely way off base. Leon Rose would walk, as reported by Ian Begley. The guy is a made man. He doesn't need this role financially. If he is not the key decision maker in basketball operations, then he doesn't need to be here. And obviously, like I said, Wesley and him are a duo. But Wesley was the initiator, the driver of the bus in terms of getting Thibodeau replaced. And that's where we sit right now, guys. So that's from a source. And basically, I trust in that. The relationship I have with that person is respected. And obviously, Dolan's talked about it for years on the podcast recently on the roommates, man. He doesn't have time to be involved in all this situation. But like I said, when it comes to a $30 million payout, you have to ask serious questions because that was a little bit of a misstep for Leon Rose, in my opinion. And if I'm the owner of the Knicks, I'm going to ask questions as well, And Dolan's never been shy from paying somebody out if he feels like that person needs to go. But if you just extended that person 12 months ago, then obviously it's a situation where you need to find out, the root of the issue right now. Obviously, the Knicks making the conference finals wasn't the major issue. It was, the need for a fresh voice, a coach that's more malleable, coaching to get the most out of their roster, more quick with adjustments, and obviously X's and O's wise, I think the Knicks are looking at somebody who can maximize this playing roster too. So let's talk about it. Salute to the chat. But yeah, be mindful of what you hear in terms of there's a lot of clickbait, rumor mill channels and, people just going with any report to bring you any kind of content, aiming to get views and clicks, fill their bank accounts up as well, right? Some days are a slow news day as well. Here, as always, on this channel, I aim to provide, obviously, content that is thorough, and I don't need to recycle, the same old rumor mill things. Basically, this is a situation where I like to come on and provide quality content and things that aren't agenda based. Luke C, great to see you. I'm on board with what's happening, as I've spoken about. I feel like coaching search, it might look a little bit messy from those on the outside, but until you're really strapped into the situation, then, a lot of people aren't in the right situation to speak because we watched the Knicks, man, all 82, all the playoffs. I think the flaws were there, the shortcomings of Thibodeau were there, and I think it's fair to get another voice to come in. The players, some of them, obviously, people can speculate. We don't know which players were more vocal than others, but I do think it comes down to the coach's trust. You know, the players' trust in the coach as well. You heard some quotes from Deuce McBride talking about some of the things they did during the regular season got exposed. And Thibodeau raising the floor of where we got to, but needing to take that next step, right? And getting some luck along the way. I really feel like the Knicks understood the situation great. And that next season, nothing's promised. You know, you have to capitalize when the situation is wide open in the East. Uh, Jay Mills says, I wouldn't mind Mike Brown. Yep. I think that's a good name, man. Good experience around the league. I don't think he's the Knicks' number one option, but you know, I understand why they're looking into a Mike Brown. Definitely, you know, he's been there, he's done that. AP says I got no problem with James Dolan. I think William Wesley wanted Thibs out. Yeah, definitely, that's been out there for a while, but I'm here to back that up. You know, from a source that I heard, basically how things played out. And look, some of the things can't be reported on. You know, that you don't get, you know, in the everyday reporting with the Knicks beat, you know, the inner workings. Like I said, it's a complicated dynamic. There's a lot of cooks in the kitchen in the Knicks front office. It's a very collaborative front office. And obviously, one of the things that they value is a collaborative relationship with the head coach. And Thibodeau, by reports, is obviously very rigid in his ways, his decisions to go with what he wants to go with. And obviously, some players, some people had to tap him on the shoulder and say, "Hey, why don't you try this? Why don't you, you know, let's be open to look at this situation. You know, with a double big lineup, um, you know, let's try this lineup." But obviously, Thibodeau was more stubborn in his ways. Um, but that doesn't discount the fact that he helped us get to where we were. Thibodeau, I thought this was class, man. Talked about his dream job back in 2020. He's grateful for that opportunity, thanking the fans, the players, the coaching staff for all that they did, giving their all every single day for the cause and getting this thing popping, man, in the Mecca over these last 5 seasons. And obviously we have to take that now, take that momentum and keep moving in the right direction. So, man, all class to Thibodeau for that. I appreciate what he gave. I still felt like a new voice was needed, as well as the front office, but doesn't take away from the fact that, you know, Thibodeau did a solid job over the 5 seasons, raising the floor from where we're at. But what do you think about the news about Kevin Durant? Now, as Buzzer Beater asks, CT, who do you want in that spot? I want to go with experience, and they don't have to be the biggest name, but somebody who is creative on offense, but obviously strong on defense as well. So, look, I'd have no issue with a Mike Brown, a J Kidd, Taylor Jenkins, even a Woodson if they want to go down that route. Again, got the experience. I would prefer those guys, Buzzer, over a college coach. I think college coaches, you know, could definitely bring some of their, you know, creative ideas to the role, but I feel like NBA experience, considering where we're at, you know, whether it's championship or bust, it's a lot of pressure. And I understand why they're definitely talking to all of these other coaches out here. Jay Mills says running a 7-man rotation from the season into the playoffs ain't it in this day and age of the NBA. Yet his stubbornness was a double-edged sword. Yeah. I feel like just even collaborate more, and that's some of the issues that I've heard. Thibodeau is just like, no, I'm doing it this way. Fair enough, but it was less collaborative in the end. But um, sometimes, it just comes down to a new voice. The players hearing that same message, the same voice over and over. Lack of creativity, I think it was the biggest issue. Um, so yeah, on the Kevin Durant front, we got Steve Popper who shut things down, saying the New York Knicks are not interested in trading for Kevin Durant. So that's from the local beat, Steve Popper of Newsday. But the national media shams, putting the Knicks in a lot of teams with mutual interest in Kevin Durant. Who am I more inclined to believe? I'm definitely more inclined to believe Steve Popper of Newsday for now. Um, Hearing the Knicks beat in that situation, I don't see it coming to fruition, man. I think Kevin Durant's definitely bound for San Antonio. I see them as a team that's got the assets. He can stay out west, no state taxes. He could play with Fox, Wemby. I think that's a much better fit for us. And really, it doesn't make as much sense for us, man. Who are we going to give up? Right? Are we going to give up OG? I'm not giving up Cat for a Kevin Durant. And so Giannis obviously is a different story. You go all in for a Giannis, but yeah, for a KD 37, what happens if it gets to the postseason and his body breaks down? Um, Luke C. Salute says Mike Brown did very well with LBJ in Cleveland as coach. As coach of the Lakers, he did a good job with the Kings' dynamic duo. Yeah, I like the fact that he is a hard-nosed coach still, commands respect of all the players. Definitely a loud voice, is not afraid to stick up for players, up against referees, all of those things we've seen, in the past. Who could forget the situation where he became a meme and stuck up for the players over bad officiating as well. I think he got a raw deal in Sacramento. I mean, a very flawed roster. Players sort of quitting on him as well. But I think it's going to come down to how he interviews, what his vision for this roster would be. I think that's where he could really win over the Knicks front office, man. Because there's so many well-credentialed coaches, but I think it's going to come down to the interviews. I mean, we all know these guys can coach, but basically in the meetings when Leon and Wes ask, okay, like this is a situation, let's say we run it back with Cat, with JB, we strengthen the bench. Okay, what do you see? What do you see with this team? What vision do you see? But I like the fact that he's coached De'Aaron Fox, a point guard, a ball dominant point guard that runs the offense. Is the engine. So I think that a lot of things there could translate, fam. Buzzer beater CT. If KD, Giannis are off the table, who do we go after? So I feel like we're going to go, more aligned to strengthen our depth, fam. My gut tells me what I see, what I hear right now is that Mikal Bridges, Karl Anthony Towns are more likely to stay, and they run it back. I really think a new coach, a second year continuity is key, but also the Knicks will have 5.7 million to add a solid, rotation piece. Also, they will be able to re-sign a veteran or two, whether it be Landry, Shamet. I've updated the graphic, so I see you. Let's talk a little bit about the news coming through. Steve Popper confirming that Precious Achua is very unlikely to return. So taking Precious out of the graphic, it looks like PJ Tucker has the team option, but the Knicks will be most likely to decline and free up that money. They can bring PJ Tucker back throughout the season on a cheaper deal, but it makes sense financially to decline PJ's deal because it's expensive, and the Knicks can save some money. So PJ, also Cameron Payne. I think Cam Payne is unlikely to return. If the Knicks are going to bring one or two of the veterans back, I think it would be Landry Shamet at the top. So I think they'll bring Landry back. The Knicks will have the choice to make to sign Kevin McCullough Jr. to a proper standard deal. He's been on the two-way, so he hasn't yet been on the real second round draft pick exception. So I think they'll sign Kevin McCullough. You've got obviously Tyler Kolek, Pacome Dardier, Ariel Huckbordy, man. Those guys need to factor into next season if the Knicks are running it back. Then they can add a veteran with the taxpayer exception, 5.7 million, and they have another roster spot available for the draft pick, the 50th overall pick coming up in the draft. And so I think two things are key. What I see is, who do they choose to re-sign as the veteran, whether it be Landry, could it be DeLon Wright, or could it be somebody else? Maybe they wash their hands. We thank Landry for his service. Maybe they find out that, somebody like a CP3 is willing to take a minimum. Or maybe you find out that Al Horford says, you know what, I'm done in Phoenix. I'm done in Boston. I don't want to retire just yet. I got a relationship with Karl Anthony Towns. I'll sign for you guys with the minimum. Then you definitely look at that, But if there isn't really a clear option, then I would bring back Landry. I like what he gave. But yeah, the Knicks will still have the $5.7 million taxpayer exception. They could get Tyus Jones for that price range. They could potentially get a Yarbrough Sele. They could get an Al Horford. They could get a Keon Ellis. They could get a Seth Curry, a sharpshooter, a Gary Trent. And that would definitely bolster the bench, And then obviously we'll see what happens with Tyler Kolek and Pacome Dardier. And the 50th pick. So that is the other thing, guys. Now that we have a draft pick where, look, being honest, there's nothing really to get too excited about when it comes to the 50th pick. However, when the Knicks situation is that we're picking on a needs-based situation, we can find the player that fits the need of the roster the most. Maybe a stretch four, a guy that replaces Precious Achiuwa on the roster. Maybe a guy that can rebound, has a jump shot. Somebody that can come along, maybe enter the rotation for next season. A prospect that they can develop. But whoever it is, they can target based on a need situation. So maybe a Kobe Bryant out of Kentucky, who's a sharpshooter, one of the best shooters in the class. But, he's a guy that's not much of a two-way player, but more of a offensive-minded, shot maker. And so I think that's the most likely situation, Buzzer. I don't really see a major trade from Mikal Bridges, Karl Anthony Towns if KD is out of the equation, and it looks like Giannis is going to run it back. I think with Milwaukee as well. Jay Mills 22 says, I'll say tweak the bench and run it back. Yeah, I think that's most likely. Luke C says, I think KD goes to Houston. Yeah, that's a good spot. That's a good spot for him as well. They've got some assets that they can tinker with. Now, I was playing around with the trade machine. I'm not going to, get it too deep into it tonight. But I think, obviously, Karl Anthony Towns will have a limited trade market. He's earning 55 million next season, 60 million plus the following season. I think we just traded for him. And so if it's not for a Giannis trade, I would definitely be for bringing Karl Anthony Towns back for his second season with a new coach. Mitchell Robinson's healthy. and see if they can grow, grow this situation together. Mikal Bridges, I think limited trade market as well. He's so important to the team. Yes, he was underwhelming, during the season, but he's an important part of the team, and you're not going to get back those 5 picks. It is what it is. His value is very limited. But if there is a major salary that gets traded, my thoughts personally is you see what you can get for OG Anunoby. Now, I got to preface by saying I love OG, and I think he's a vital piece to this team. He's so important, and he was one of our most consistent players. But what I think is, with his $42 million, the Knicks weren't intending and hoping to extending OG that much, when they traded for him. The thought process was, we'll retain OG somewhere around the 35, 33, 35, 37. The Knicks ended up having to go deep into the extension for OG, which is $42 million. Now, he's been worth every single dollar because he's just so important to this ball club. But if there's a trade where you can send OG somewhere and get back a whole heap of depth, like 3 really, really solid rotation pieces for the $42 million, and you stretch that out, that's something that I would look at personally. I did play around a little bit with the Houston Rockets. I think that would be a team that would be interested in an OG Anunoby. They're trying to, get more experience. They're trying to take that next step. And if you could get back a Jabari Smith and another piece like a Tari Eason and a potentially Reed Shepherd or a Cam Whitmore, whether you could maybe do a Jabari Smith and a Dylan Brooks, I think the Knicks would be wise to listen. OG had his healthiest year, and it was great. He's not known to be as durable. He's approaching 28. I think would be selling high. But look, yeah, I know a lot of people would definitely prefer to keep OG. I would love to keep OG. What I'm saying is, I just think that, the Knicks need to explore ways to add more depth to the roster. And Karl Anthony Towns, I don't know what his trade market would be. I do think you could turn OG Anunoby into maybe 2-3 serious pieces for the right team. Let us know your thoughts on that one. Luke C says, as constructed, the Knicks have one of the best starting fives. Run it back with a full training camp. Continuity, Luke, I think that's key. And look how open the East is going to be next season. I think it'd be very risky shaking things up too dramatically unless it's for a Giannis. Shez V says, I like Stephen A. And not Stephen A. Smith. Stephen Adams. Salute. I like Stephen Adams as well. I think, though, the market, from what I'm seeing, is going to be around the full mid-level exception, which is going to be around the 14 milli as well. Which is why, if the Knicks are looking for maybe a middle shake-up, maybe not a major splash, but they will be looking at one of these guys that's earning a major salary. Hart, 19 million. Bridges, obviously, in line to get an extension above 25 million. OG is earning, like I said, 42 million. And you've obviously, Cat and Brunson. Buzzer says, will Keon Ellis take the 5-point milli taxpayer mid-level exception? I think that it's a good shout. I think you could promise him a serious role as sixth man, sixth, seventh man. Maybe you even want to make Deuce McBride a starter, and you could say Keon Ellis, you and Josh Hart could be a nice duo off the bench. So maybe Mike Brown coming on board is a selling point, Buzzer, with his relationships. Mike Brown's a very respected coach among players, I think he got a raw deal in SAC. I think Taylor Jenkins, obviously very respected as well. He got a raw deal. So those would be my two leading candidates right now. I would interview Johnny Bryant, like I said, see if he can impress based on his experience together with Kenny Atkinson, what he learned next to Thibodeau. I would love to pick Johnny Bryant's brain, and I'm sure that Wesley will definitely grant him an interview. Obviously the respect is there, the relationship. Uh, but obviously, I think the Knicks will continue to try to beat down the door with Jason Kidd. They won't pivot from J Kidd until they've exhausted all of those avenues. Um, yeah, Luke says Landry didn't get much of a chance with the injury throughout the season. Shez V says Ellis is 25. I'd sign him. Just Knicks salute. Darren, what's good? Knicks haven't really done any pre-draft workouts lately. Yeah, we haven't heard as much leak out, fam. I'm definitely keeping you know, my ears out there on the pulse to try to find out what's happening. I do think with the 50th pick, the Knicks will be looking at a steal, a sleeper, a guy that will fit the roster. Hopefully, a guy that can take a real roster spot, not just a two-way. I would definitely love to bring Marjon Beauchamp back on the two-way. He's a two-way player. We'll see what can happen with him. But I've heard some teams do some free agent workouts, so maybe the Knicks will be interested in doing that as well. Shez V says, I would hate to see OG traded away. Yeah, OG is a player that is so important to the roster, is required. My only thought process is if I trade OG, it's to achieve a few things. It's to achieve more depth and turn his salary into multiple important players. And the other thing is obviously you're selling high. He was healthy all season. And the other thing is that, his defense is has to be replaced, And so if you're trading OG, I would look at a player like a Jabari Smith, Atari Eason, Dylan Brooks, another multiple wing defenders, and then you can move there. It would give the Knicks a lot more financial flexibility right now. Because I just keep going back to the fact that I've heard the Knicks were obviously willing and needed to bring OG back, but they weren't expecting to give him 42 million. He obviously used his free agency to the best leverage possible. His agent Sam Rose obviously did the best for his client. He was linked to Philadelphia to drive the price up, and the Knicks had to give OG 42 million. But the Knicks are pressed up against the second apron. If in another world they were able to bring OG back for 35 or 34 million, that would have given the Knicks around $10 million below the second apron. That would have given them a heap of flexibility to flesh out their depth. But like I said, it is what it is. I'm happy with the OG re-signing. He's a key member of the team, but I just think we're in a tricky situation with no financial wiggle room right now. We're looking at vets minimums. We're looking at hoping that a second round pick could help us out. We're looking at hopefully a taxpayer exception looking to help us out. That wasn't the Knicks' vision with Brock Aller and these guys taking some haircuts. I think they're hoping for some extra financial flexibility. We'll see how it plays out. Yeah, Juan V says, I wouldn't trade OG or Towns for Durant. Durant is old and fragile. Part of me would just love to see Durant for a year or two, make that run, quality go-to scorer in the clutch. But yeah, it doesn't make much sense for the long term, Let's keep building organically. Yeah, Buzzer, I noticed there is no campaign on the roster photo. I do think campaign is less likely to return, most definitely. The Knicks have got to explore ways to fill their roster spots. I do think Landry deserves to come back, But if you can bring a Tyus Jones or a Keon Ellis and you elevate Tyler Kolek, you make Deuce McBride maybe a starter. I think campaign is definitely redundant. Johnny says, CT, if OG and Cat had to go for Giannis, yes, which one of the two would you rather keep? Definitely, I would keep Cat. I would send OG in the deal if I can get Giannis and keep Cat and only send out OG. I think Giannis replaces everything OG gives you, and Cat obviously can play at the 5. But if it's OG and Cat to go for Giannis, yeah, I would still have to say yeah. Giannis is, he's a top 3, top 2 player in the league. Right now, right up against the Joker. But yeah, I must admit, man, I'm a little surprised that Giannis has come out and pledged his loyalty to Milwaukee. I thought now's the perfect time for Giannis to to explore the next chapter. He's won a chip in Milwaukee, and I think he, nobody would begrudge him, for moving on and trying to win his second chip somewhere else. But there could be a whole lot of smoke where that is. Juan says, Knicks need to add to the core, not subtract. There are no good deals out there. They need a tough character guy like a Steven Adams and a point guard that can create and play defense at the point of attack. Yep, I agree. I like Steven Adams. Add rebounding toughness. I would definitely get in on some Walker Kessler discussions with Utah. There are more reports. They're more open-minded to trading a Walker Kessler now. What do you guys think about that? Keep Mitch if you can. I'm not sending Mitch out, but I'm just planning for the future. Mitchell Robinson has 1 more year to run on his contract, then he becomes a free agent. So you got a future plan and a future proof. And I would love some more help alongside Karl Anthony Towns so that you can run the double big lineup all the time, full time. If we're running it back, as I've said, I would move Josh Hart to the bench, or if Hart remains starting, I would just decrease his minutes. Obviously without Thibodeau, it's fair to speculate that Hart will go back to a more a steady diet of maybe a 30-minute a night guy, maybe a 26-minute a night guy. But I think the days of Hart playing 36, 38 plus minutes, they should be a thing of the past, man. Especially if you do bring in a guy like a Gary Trent, right? I would run Hart and Deuce McBride off the bench, and I would insert Gary Trent into the starting lineup immediately with Brunson, with Bridges, Gary Trent, OG, and Cat. There's your 5-out lineup, ladies and gentlemen, as intended, as planned by Leon and Wes when they traded for Cat. Billy D says Darren is another coach denied in New York Knicks. Okay, interesting, Darren. I love the Knicks are continuing to do due diligence. They're going to find someone that'll shake loose, even a key assistant. Doesn't have to be a head coach. Could be somebody's key assistant. J Dub says they have a pre-workout with Mohamed Diawara and Jonathan Pierre. I like it. Great heads up. Appreciate it, J Dub. The Knicks obviously are the 50th pick. We'll be doing some draft content, no doubt, coming up soon. And I want to talk about some options for the Knicks. They will clear a roster spot, for one of these second-round picks, because it will keep them below the second apron, just like last year when they gave Pacome Dardier, Hakpority, and Kolek a standard second-round deal. So I think the difference is this year, we know what those guys bring. We know what the roster is now. We can pick somebody based on needs and fit. I would definitely look at a rugged power forward. You lose Precious. I think we need someone who can protect the rim a little bit, maybe hit a mid-range, provide some offense and rebound at the power forward spot. Somebody who can maybe be switchable and guard threes as well. What do you guys think? Point guard, I'd rather look at that at free agency. You've got Tyler Kolek still. Let Cameron Payne walk. Bring back Landry. He can run some action. I like DeLon Wright, but I think it's going to be a squeeze. I think, as once again reported by Steve Popper, Precious, PJ Tucker, Cameron Payne, and DeLon Wright are most likely to not return. Well, I think he said Landry. He didn't mention DeLon Wright, but he did mention Landry Shamet, not likely to return either. But we'll see. I'll be surprised. I don't see. Landry loves New York. He loves to live in the New York area. Yeah, I like Hunter Salas, J-Dub, Eric Dixon, Kobe Brea. I think William Wesley will be beating that Kobe Brea drum with Kentucky. How about RJ, the local product at St. John's? RJ, he could get a look in. The second round is kind of thinned out a little bit because a lot of guys went back to college, man. We're seeing a huge change in the landscape. There were some prospects I was looking at, but they've decided to go back to school and make a bag. This NIL has changed the game big time. For example, a player like Alex Condon from Australia winning the national championship with the Gators. Condon, going back to Florida, man, he's going to earn huge money as an NIL, big name. Probably north of 2 million. I'm just speculating, but he would definitely surpass any second round pick exception that the NBA would pay. So yeah, Alex Condon returning back to school. A heap of other prospects as well. So I think the second round is kind of thinned out a little bit, but the 50th pick, the Knicks could get creative. They could, throw in some cash considerations. They got $3 million in the DeLon Wright, Jericho Sims deal. That doesn't help you for the cap, but it's cash. It's loose cash that you could, sweeten the deal. Maybe someone who's picking in the 42, 40 range, you could say, hey, we'll give you pick 50, we'll give you $3 million, to help your books, and we'll take pick 52, 42, and the Knicks might be able to move up. We'll see how that plays out. Cody, salute. Hope all is well with you, brother. Great to see you. Let us know your thoughts on the coaching front with Mike Brown and Taylor Jenkins names to look out for. Mike Woodson's name thrown into the mix. The Knicks getting rejected left, right, and center when it comes to experienced names currently with teams. Ron Artest is continuing to throw his name in the mix, AP. I love Ron Artest and his, loyalty to New York City. He definitely wants to be a part of this. Eddie says we need a lights-out shooting guard in the draft. Yeah, someone who can, be a knockdown shooter above the break. Someone like Kobe Brea would be big time. I agree. Now, I do like what, the potential of Tyler Kolek. I'm so excited for Summer League, guys. Yeah, it might not be one of those years where we have like a Obi Toppin, an RJ, a Quickly or a Mitch, a freshly drafted prospect. But basically, we didn't get much of a look at a Kolek, Pacome, McCullough, and Huck Porty. So I know a lot of diehards going to be waiting to see how those guys can show out at Summer League, myself included. Also, assuming we are going to draft somebody in the second round this season as well. It could be a stacked summer league roster, man. Maybe we have the possibility of going for that summer league chip as well. We heard from Rokas over in Europe. He said that he's not going to be back. He's not going to be back for summer league. He said 2 times is enough. It's over to the New York Knicks. So don't forget, the Knicks have Rokas's rights. They could trade him in a deal to maybe get some future assets. People downplaying what the Knicks can do with their assets. We have the Wizards' top 8 protected pick. That's unlikely to convey as a first. It'll become 2 seconds, but you never say never. Nobody expected the Detroit Pistons, pick to convey this season, and it did. Unfortunately, the Knicks needed to trade that pick in the Karl Anthony Towns deal, but nobody expected that one. So the Pistons were better than expected. Let's see what the Wizards end up doing, man. They got a lot of good young talent, but it'll most likely become 2 seconds. But the Knicks have 7 future second-round picks they can trade. They have draft rights to James Nagy, a 7-foot big man overseas. They've got Rokas as well. They could throw those guys into the mix. Buzzer Beater says, CT, why hasn't someone announced they want to coach the New York Knicks? It's dicey for them because, basically the Knicks are only going to offer the role to someone, immediately that's on top of their list. If it's someone who they just want to interview, then it's tricky. If they say yes, then it's going to put them in a situation where their current team, might turn against them if they're unsuccessful. So yeah, it is tricky. I know Jason Kidd would be an instant hire, but a guy like Quinn Snyder today, I don't know if the Knicks would automatically hire Quinn Snyder. But yeah, what plays out in the media and what is actually happening behind the scenes can be 2 different things. The Knicks have reached out to a wide spread of guys, and they're probably conducting interviews already. Collegiate coaches as well. They're looking at all names, all possibilities. And not just saying this obviously from the Knicks perspective, but the Knicks job is very attractive. I mean, let's be real. You walk into a ready-made roster. Yes, there's pressure. There's pressure to exceed expectations and, win a chip. But look, the East is weaker. At the bare minimum, you run this roster back and you're going to be a 55-win team in the East, right? You could sleepwalk coaching this team and you're going to win 55 games. That's how bad the East is, and obviously it's even weaker. But that said, first round, who are you going to come up against? It could be another Detroit kind of team. You should win that series. Second round, you might end up facing Indiana. Maybe not. You might end up facing, Cleveland, someone else. I mean, I want someone who is confident, come in, look at this situation and say, yeah, I'm going to take this team to that next step, that next level. And that's what a coach should be doing. An experienced coach, in these interviews, you should be salivating at the fact that you could play a 5-out lineup with a Karl Anthony Towns. You have, you're the only franchise in the NBA that had 2 all-star starters this past season. You had 2 all-NBA players. You've got OG Anunoby, an all-defensive type guy. You've got a defensive menace in Mitchell Robinson, who's now fully healthy as well. And so, they're going to get someone great. They're going to get someone good, and I'm confident. They're just, they're leaving no stone unturned, and they're basically being patient. We'll see how it plays out. Eddie says Kolek must get time off the bench this year as a backup point. Yeah, Eddie, so in regards to the 3-point shooting, Kolek can splash it above the break. And so, yeah, he's ready. He's prime. He's 25. He's got a heap of college experience. He's got 1 year experience now as a pro. Played a lot of G League was the MVP of the G League showcase. We'll have another summer league under his belt, and I do think that Tyler Kolek, yeah, he'll be a rotation player this season, if I'm guessing. He should be, and that's why I want to get a coach that's good with point guards. You know, I think Deuce McBride and Kolek would work way better together than obviously a Cameron Payne and a Deuce. Kolek's looking to get people involved. He's not looking for his own shot, but he can catch and shoot. He can play off the ball as well, and he's just an unbelievable passer of the ball as well. Cody says, I'm a bit surprised Knicks offered Thibs without a replacement on tap. That said, I think Johnny Bryant ends up with the head coaching role. Yeah, I think Johnny Bryant has, a leg up from other candidates that aren't big names. I do think Johnny Bryant, his relationship with Wesley is key. His relationship with some of the players on the roster, the point guard especially. Johnny Bryant is used to working with big name point guards. Dame, Spider, Brunson now. The only thing with Johnny Bryant is I think he's just going to have to win the job in the interviews, because his vision, his philosophy in those interviews is going to set him apart. Because like I said, he has a leg up over all these dudes. He's been here for years. He could come into the interview with a plan that just blows everybody out of the water. He could come in and say, "Look, Brunson here, Cat here. I know, I was here. I know how this can work." Or anytime, Leon or Dolan or Wesley asks a question, he could already have the answer. He could be well prepared for this situation because, he knows he has more familiarity with this situation, but he's going to be up against some big time names. I know Mike Brown would love to get back into the league, especially in this situation. Taylor Jenkins as well. I think those guys got a raw deal. Terry Stotts is a name people should look out for as well. Offensive creative coach. I think that's where they want to go. They want a coach with experience. That's why they're asking about all these names. But I think they want a coach that's, experienced in the NBA, whether as a big time assistant too. I'm surprised, maybe not surprised as much, but Patrick Ewing just doesn't even seem to be in line, even in consideration in the running for a head coaching job. What do you guys think about that? I know it's close to me because I feel like at some point, I think Patrick Ewing deserved an opportunity to coach this team. But obviously recently the success he hasn't had as a head coach with Georgetown, not getting, many opportunities, being an assistant for so long has counted against him. It's kind of in that situation where Mark Jackson is right now. They're not as looked at as maybe, 5-10 years ago. Dardier could use some run as well, Luke. Yeah, Dardier is a guy that I think is coming into his own as a 20-year-old now. Didn't play as much as he should have rookie year. That's what's most disappointing to me. A guy I think who could really help us defensively. I'm really excited about his defensive potential. Now, I think he's more of an offensive. I think his ceiling offensively is greater coming into the league. But if he can really turn into a real two-way player, I think with his length, his wingspan, and his 6'8" size, I think is definitely what this team needs. I want us to get somebody who could help at the point of attack. You see Tyrese Halliburton, how difficult of a matchup that was for Mikal Bridges. Navigating the screens, the double drag, and just more switchable guys. I think Dardier into his career, he could guard fours, he could guard threes and twos as well, can shuffle his feet. We really need those kind of guys. Um, prioritize him. First round pick. He's on a rookie friendly salary. It would be criminal if Pacome Dardier is not, given an opportunity to be in the rotation early. Wilson Dang, salute, says no way Knicks fired Thibs without a replacement. Well, it looks like they haven't had, they haven't got someone that they want to hire immediately. They've obviously had the target J Kidd, but yeah, Johnny Bryan is there. They know they're comfortable with him. So I think the Knicks are comfortable where they are. Whether it's being uncomfortable, they're comfortable right now, right? They don't care that all this messaging is coming out, that they're asking for other coaches, because they're aiming at the top, and they're working their way down. Like I said, you're not going to interview somebody who's your 10th choice. You're going to inquire about some of these experienced guys, first. And then you're going to work your way down. AP says JB can be this generation's Jeff. That's a lofty comparison, but yeah, in terms of JB, I like the fact that he's he's great with the players and he's also close with the point guard. The point guards and the point guard's mind and that situation. Right, we know Jalen Brunson is the engine, but I'm excited to see what he could get out of Deuce with Kolek as well. Johnny says KFS Jeremy suggested Cavs Sam Merrill as a good pickup. Your thoughts? Yeah, shout out to those guys. I did catch that as well. I like Sam Merrill. I like the name. I think he would fit. He wouldn't be though. He wouldn't be top of my choice. He would be somewhere, fourth, fifth, sixth. I think the shooting is ideal. I would love us to get someone a bit more stout defensively. I would definitely look at, a guy like a Keon Ellis first. I would definitely look at a guy like an Al Horford first. Kelly Oubre, Gary Trent. I do have my concerns over Mikal Bridges' point of attack. I think so. If I can strengthen that area, I'm okay with that. I think we've got some other guys that we can help out with the shooting. You can always find some shooting with a vet minimum guy as well. I'm not sure about using the 5.7 on Sam. I think worst case scenario, you could just bring Landry back. So yeah, great question, AP. Is Patrick Ewing a modern coach? So I think that's the stigma. That's what's counting against Pat. But what my philosophy is, Pat's a guy that is a legend of the team and the club, right? The players would look up to him, respect. But with Patrick, you bring in a key offensive coordinator, a guru at what they do, a specialist. And then on the other side, Patrick's great at the defensive side, and you could bring in another defensive coordinator as well. And you let Patrick listen to his assistants a lot. That's something that Thibodeau didn't really do. This needs to be a collaborative thing, and that's what the front office is hoping, right? We don't want another stubborn, minded coach that's just going to tune everybody out. We need somebody that's going to listen and value all of the assistants and hopefully bring in some specialists, some coordinators, understanding that, hey, this isn't my expertise, right? I'm a defensive guy. If I'm Mike Woodson, I'm going to bring in, a coordinator, somebody who's legit. Terry Stotts, I'm going to bring in a Mike D'Antoni as an offensive coordinator, and basically delegate the areas. I feel we'll see how that all plays out. No Cat, Life's Analyst, salute, says people focus on Brunson and Cat and how playing them together hurts the D, but I think it's when we play Brunson, Cat, Hart together is what really hurts our defense. Yeah, that's a fair point. I feel like where I felt this team had the most success defensively is when we were able to switch. I think obviously it's a situation where you can't switch all the time. There comes a time when you have to just fight over the screen, you go over or under. Um, but yeah, the more switchable guys on the court, I think the better. And I don't think the Knicks left it too late. That's one of the things that counted against Thibodeau, right? He waited until the Boston series to switch. We should have done that against Detroit, and we should have done that during the regular season. And that's one of the things that Deuce McBride hinted at in his comments. When Deuce said, "Yeah, I felt like some of the things we didn't do in the reg season, left us exposed during the regular season." But yeah, with Brunson, Cat, Hart, I feel like we need to really think about the lineups, the data that we play, and get size, around Cat and Brunson. Hart is not he doesn't have great length, and he's not a very tall, wing. He's really a shooting guard, playing as a wing. And so yeah, I understand what you're saying. I agree. I think you got to try up a Pacome Dardier and see what he can be. Shez V says, I wanted Dardier to play way more than last season. And Eddie says Dardier can be our big surprise if he gets playing time. Yeah, let's trust that our development coaches have really made strides with Dardier. Summer League is going to be big time because he's a boy in a man's body, is Dardier. If he bulks up a little bit, gets in that weight room, that 6'8" frame should create some havoc, in summer league. And don't discount Kevin McCullough, man. He's a dog. I've been watching some Kevin McCullough highlights. He had a triple-double in the G League towards the end of the season when he started to get healthy and he started to look like the old Kevin McCullough from college. He's a 6'6" swing as well, a defense first guy. That's good in transition, can handle the rock as well. So yeah, my wing upgrades could be Dardier, McCullough. They could be staring us in the face in our backyard. Hopefully they're all healthy. Summer league, see what they do, man. But yeah, I would love to get us a Keon Ellis as well. Yarbel Sale, another switchable guy. Matisse Thybulle, Kelly Oubre. You replace Josh Hart's starting role with more size. I think that's going to help, counter the Brunson Cat troubles. Cody says, I don't think Mark Jacks deserved the cold shoulder after all he had done to get Golden State to the championship level relevance. I'd give him an interview. Yeah. Yeah, I think nothing, it won't hurt to give Jackson an interview, if my memory serves me correct, I think there was rumors we did speak to him last search. Now, it obviously didn't advance very far, but I think we did speak to him. Yeah, I think with the new age league right now, with assistants getting jobs and all that, I really feel like Mark Jackson, it'll be difficult to get back into the league just because he's been out for a minute. Yeah, I think people look at him as a guy who did raise the floor for Golden State, set the table. Chosen and loving it, salute. One fact that the Knicks executives understood was Thibs was incapable of taking us to a championship game. Yeah, I feel like they deserve more respect. It was a tough decision, but what frustrates me is this media and people, trying to paint the narrative that the Knicks were dumb or stupid for letting Thibs go. They're the ones with Thibodeau in the war room every single day, having conversations with him, speaking with him, seeing him. They have the most intel on a Thibodeau. Pros, cons, all of those things. Not these people that maybe flick on the TV and they watch maybe like 15 minutes of the New York Knicks and then they change the channel and then they're trying to claim that they're experts on the situation. So yeah, I trust what they're doing. Uh, but obviously, it's no doubt that those players' interviews and the word coming out of those meetings, did ultimately secure Thibodeau's fate. But I do think that Wesley, specifically Leon, major concerns had before then, well before then, during the Detroit series, the Boston series, even. So I'm comfortable it wasn't a knee jerk decision, a reaction. Oh, we didn't beat Indiana, let's fire Thibs. No, if anything, they'd already, had in their mind that whether we beat Indiana or we didn't, they already had, you know, those concerns. Um, Patrick is a solid assistant, says Chosen, and AP says Patrick would be real good for our centers. Yeah, I think. Look, the chapter's probably turned on that opportunity for Pat, but yeah, I feel like it's a missed opportunity in the past, definitely. Um, I just think as organizations, you should prop up and big up your own legends, give them those chances, because look, Thibodeau, 5 years, but he's from the tree, the Van Gundy tree. He's from Connecticut. It was a good story and it paid dividends. Those kinds of things I like, bringing in, giving these talents from within, giving them an opportunity. That's why the Johnny Bryant thing is big time as well. Uh, Cody says if the coach can get McBride up to McConnell's speed, the bench would improve greatly. Um, yeah, so I feel like McBride, we know individually what he can do, how talented he is. I feel like what hurt McBride was, poor lineup decisions. We didn't play McBride much with Brunson. Those two are great together. We played McBride with Cam Payne. That didn't work so well. And then, McBride's an asset. We need to be positioning him to succeed with his shooting, floor spacing. We know he hasn't got great size and length, but the shooting is one element. Guy that can play on the ball with Brunson, off the ball a little bit, vice versa. I think it's clear the organization sees McBride as a shooting guard, kind of a wing. We need to highlight that. Um, yeah, that was crazy, Shesvi. Kolek played a G League game and then he played the NBA game in the same day. That was fun. Um, that was fun, and look, they didn't get as many opportunities with the big club, but I think we might see positive results with Dardier, McCullough, and Kolek, Huckbordy, because they did get some valuable minutes in the G League. We finally used our G League a lot more than we did with guys like Deuce McBride and that. And so, not that I think they really needed it, especially Kolek. He was pretty ready to play minutes, but I feel like just keeping him active, keeping him in rhythm was key. Um, David says, is there something the Knicks aren't liking about Taylor Jenkins? Not that I've heard. I think that is a name linked now officially by James Edward of The Athletic, James Edwards III of The Athletic. And so Mike Brown, Taylor Jenkins, I think the Knicks thinking is quite clear now. The Knicks front office love to tell you with their actions. They like to tell you with their thinking. They don't need to speak in the interviews to tell you what they're looking at. And what they value now is a coach that's had head coaching experience in the NBA, positive results, obviously the experience is key. And I think they do like former players as well. I won't be surprised if the next name that they try to, gain permission from is Chauncey Billups, a point guard, success with Portland, former Nick as well. Don't be surprised if Chauncey Billups is a name that you hear, the next name that the Knicks have kicked the tires with as well. Eddie says, all we have to do is improve our bench. Just play Kolek. Everyone touches the ball and the players get shots in rhythm. Yeah, Eddie, man, I think with Kolek, it just comes down to knack for passing, but IQ. IQ-wise, man, the guy knows where everybody is on the floor. He'll find Cat trailing. He'll know when OG Anunoby, is in the corner cutting. I feel like Kolek and Bridges could have good synergy off the bench as well. So it's all about. I feel like the Knicks ceiling alone can just be raised by a coach that's going to deploy better lineups. We have a lot of talent, but Thibodeau looked at things a certain way. He looked at things like with rebounding in mind, defense and size. Whereas hopefully a new coach is going to look at things like plus minus, which players complement each other more. It's quite clear that Hart didn't complement the rest of the starters, and also we didn't put Mikal Bridges in the best spot to get his talents shining. Mikal Bridges, we've seen what he did in was it game 4, game 4 against Boston. Man, he took over in the fourth quarter. He has that capability. The mid-range, running the offense. When Brunson's off the floor, Bridges needs to be out there. Bridges or Cat need to be out there. They need to space these minutes out. Buzzer says Steve Kerr's assistants. Yeah, who are they again? I feel like there's a big name. I know, speaking of assistants, Luke Walton. So Luke Walton's name has come up as well. Didn't get great reviews in LA, but we know that was a poison chalice trying to coach LeBron James, and a poor roster. What do you guys think of Luke Walton? Luke C with the super chat says, CT, outstanding analysis. Smash that like button. Got the streets buzzing. Thank you, Luke C, the legend. Appreciate you joining us tonight, and everyone else, all the diehards in the building. I'm calm. I'm calm at the moment. Yeah, it is a little bit of an uncomfortable situation having no coach. Obviously, we haven't been in this situation, guys, for 5 years. But that tells me a few things. That tells me we've had stability, right? People are trying to paint the narrative that, we don't have a clue, we don't have a plan, we're firing coaches every 2 years. I mean, there's a lot more dysfunctional teams in the NBA, and the New York Knicks, decided that it was in the best interests of moving forward to find another coach, right? And so be it. If that's what they believe, these players have a big say as well. And I feel like everyone can showcase their skills with a new coach as well. And hopefully they just bring something new to the table. Continuity will be key. Eddie says, CT, would you consider trading for Moody Kuminga from GS? They don't get enough burn at Golden State. Would make us more athletic. Yeah, I would definitely look into that. Maybe a Kevon Looney, but Moody Kuminga. I feel like they need more consistent minutes. But yeah, somewhere along the same line of thinking, Eddie, I was thinking of the Rockets. They've got Cam Whitmore, Reed Shepherd. They've got Tari Eason, Jalen Green, Fred Van Vliet's coming off their books, Jabari Smith, Dylan Brooks. They've got a lot of spare parts. It'll be interesting to see how many of them have to go, for them to make an upgrade, whether it be Kevin Durant, whatever it is. That's why I said earlier I would love to keep OG, but I'm trying to look at this roster and I'm trying to think, okay, what possibilities is there where one player with a major salary can get us 3 or 4 serious pieces, and that is going to strengthen the overall team, I feel, with more bodies, more depth. But you can only do that if you replace OG's output defensively. Um, you can't lose OG and bring in offensive players. You have to, if you are trading OG, it has to be a Giannis, or it has to be, multiple defensive players like Jabari, Tari Eason, etc. Um, too. Um, I feel like Mitchell Robinson will be back. I can't see them trading Mitch. It's just too important right now, unless Karl Anthony Towns goes. I think Mitchell Robinson's future could be attached to what they think about Karl Anthony Towns. You know, I also can't see Josh Hart getting traded just yet. Not saying he's untouchable, but I think they're definitely going to run it back before they look at a Josh Hart trade, right? I think we're going to really see Josh Hart's real impact as a 28-minute, 26-minute a night guy off the bench, with a real starting, um, a starting change with a more offensive minded guy. I mean, rebounding, Thibodeau was obsessed with rebounding, but Karl Anthony Towns showed us just how great of a rebounder he is. And if you're playing Mitchell Robinson, double big lineups as well, OG's a good rebounder. You don't need to play Hart 39 minutes. I get down the stretch, Hart's that guy where, he gets you those 30, 70 balls and he's a menace out there. But like I said, Cat can rebound. He's elite at rebounding. Mitchell Robinson as well. So I think for longevity, my first major minutes change would be Josh Hart to the bench. And I think that could be one of the reasons why Thibodeau, met his demise, because the front office probably made suggestions. We know Hart made suggestions to Thibs, but Thibs didn't listen, man. He even changed the starting lineup to put Mitch in just to play Hart the same amount of minutes, which defeats the entire purpose, of making the change. Buzzer says Kaminga streaky. AP says Chauncey Billups. Interesting. Yeah, I think the notion that this Knicks job isn't attractive is definitely way off base. A lot of these coaches would leave their team in a heartbeat. It's their club that's not interested in letting them walk. That's the difference. It shows how clueless some people are. Most of them trolls, saying, yeah, nobody wants to coach the Knicks. They're getting rejected, all of this. It's not the coaches rejecting the Knicks. It's their current employer that's rejecting the Knicks, right? I'm pretty sure Chauncey Billups would leave a rebuilding team to coach a contender I'm pretty sure that Jason Kidd would leave a team that traded Luka to coach the Knicks if he had a choice, right? Maybe Ime Udoka, I could understand with respect to the Rockets and, why he would, love to stay with Houston. They were the second seed. But, I mean, I can't believe that Quinn Snyder would choose to stay in Atlanta over come here if if it was up to him. David says, I'd like to pick up Malcolm Brogdon, perfect backup to Brunson, and can play alongside with him. Yeah, one thing Brogdon provides is the size and switchability. He can guard twos, but the downside is the injuries. Just can't stay healthy as much. So we'll see how that plays out. Chosen and loving it says OG Precious for Durant. That's a tricky one, man. I think You know, Durant with if you can get Durant and you can keep Cat and Brunson, yeah, that's dynamic. But at the same time, yeah, losing OG for a player whose durability concerns are there is something to really think about. Um, Cody says we need McCall to muscle up and bring a little more to. That helps also needs to come from within. The help needs to come also from within. Yeah, I think that's a great way to start. You know, in the off season without bringing in any shiny new toys. I think we're looking at a team that was underutilized. You know, um, the sum of its parts. You know, achieved success because they were able to have miraculous comebacks, extremely gritty, just winners, guys that just don't want to quit. Obviously, Thibodeau grinding down, the starting five as well to get results. That worked in our favor, but I feel like we definitely underutilized some of the parts, and so um, if Bridges' minutes were down, maybe he's even better, to close games out. Maybe he's more fresh, um, as well. Obviously, the the talk coming out, is that some of the players weren't comfortable with their roles or quote unquote didn't know what their role was, which is basically code for, um, I can do more or I need a new role. I definitely feel like if there's two guys that I really feel like that could, come from is Macau and OG. Um, the two members of Wingstop, right? And I know the ball was sticky to JB a lot. It didn't need to. JB's great off ball. We definitely could have had Brunson in the corner and have Mikal Bridges, see if he can attack his mismatch. Because the amount of times Brunson was guarded by a big time wing when, Bridges was guarded by Halliburton, it could have been in the best interest of the team that Mikal Bridges took over clutch time and feasted on that matchup. But we didn't do that. Some of the creative offensive issues with Thibodeau. Also, how good did OG Anunoby look throughout the season? Consistent scorer, minimal opportunities. Imagine if he was more of a focal option, especially when Brunson was out. Those 15 games Brunson was out. OG Anunoby was one of the best players, around the East in that situation. And so, yeah, I feel like there's a lot more meat on the bone when it comes to Mikal and OG Anunoby. And if I'm putting my tinfoil cap on when the word comes out that these guys have an issue with their role, I can't really see anybody else. I can't really see Deuce McBride having an issue with his role. I can't see Cameron Payne having an issue with his role. He said it himself. He's just happy to be in the league, right? Cameron Payne doesn't strike me as somebody who is expecting to play 35 minutes. Yeah, I think OG Macau, you got to get more out of those guys. Cat, Karl Anthony Towns, phenomenal offensive season, as advertised. It's just a shame we didn't get, more spacing lineups out there. If you can bring in a Seth Curry, Gary Trent, Sam Merrill, uh, some sharpshooters, bring in Kobe Breyer, um, Al Horford's floor spacing as well. I mean, this team could definitely go to another level, most definitely. Um, Eddie says, CT, do you remember seeing Kidd at the news conference when Luka was traded? He looked like a hostage, not really wanted to be there, LOL. Yeah, he was a space cadet, man. He was just like, he was daydreaming. Um, yeah, I mean, it was a tough situation to be in. I can't imagine what that would be like being the head coach. Basically, had the rug pulled from underneath. Now, I think he kind of recovered because he's an AD guy. He's a Kyrie kind of guy, but he's definitely got to be looking at the the Dallas situation, Eddie. Like we got a 1 year, 2 year window, and Dallas has the same pressure that the Knicks have. You know, if that doesn't work out, they're going to blow it up. And if they blow it up, Nico's out of there, and then most likely a new front office wants to come in, and Kidd's probably out of there. The reason why we're hearing kind of this tug of war in the media is I feel like Jason Kidd's camp wants the Knicks job, and I think some people have reported that as well. But the Dallas Mavericks, are putting a stop to it because obviously, the Knicks and Dallas have history. David says, I would trade Macau before I would trade OG. I'm just thinking who has the most value. Think about around the league. I'm just looking at, whoever we trade, who can get us back the most value. I agree in terms of I feel like OG is more important to this current version of the team, David. OG is more important given the fact that you've got Karl Anthony Towns and Brunson. But I feel like maybe Macau might have more value around the league. Maybe not. I mean, OG's contract's pretty big. Macau's about to get an extension. It's tough to say right now. I feel like we kind of lost some value on Macau because how we used him as well. I mean, he has the capability. Look at Game 4 against Boston, like I said. BD's in the building. Dirty Dancer says spamming high screens for Brunson was the only offensive role. Yeah, definitely. I feel like Thibs loves to double down. DD, he loves to double down. Does Thibodeau. You got to appreciate his loyalty to certain players, man. Elfrid Payton, Alec Burks, Keith Bogans, Taj Gibson, Luol Deng. No wonder that, if you're a Thibs disciple, you swear by him. But if you're not in that circle, just another guy. Salute Cardiac. Salute. Dirty also says, you watch OKC and Indy in the finals with everyone spread out, cutting from all directions, and the difference is stark. Yeah, it is. I feel like also with Tibbs's philosophy of crashing the glass, it killed us in transition. We've got to be a better team in transition. Even with all our flaws, if we were just a better transition defense against Indiana, we would have had enough to just get over the top. Get over the hump. I was even thinking of just biting the bullet and just face guarding Halliburton, just choosing Hart not crash the glass, just basically tag Halliburton in transition and make sure that he doesn't get out. Now, every time they scored and we had to inbound the ball, you already see a body on Brunson that were ready for the inbound. Every time we scored a basket, Cat was doing a celebration, or nobody was paying attention to their main guy, Halliburton, who's bringing the ball up. Throwing the ball in bounds. We should have just had somebody face guard Halliburton, in my opinion. If we're going to play with one, offensive deficient player, what's the point? We just don't need them. Cardiac, I've seen your thoughts on the Tibbs decision. Everything I've heard it's nothing to do with Dolan in terms of leading the movement. Once Dolan got involved with the $30 million payout, obviously Dolan was asking questions. But in my opinion, fairly so, because people want to forget about the $30 million payout. I used this analogy earlier tonight. If your partner or your child came to you and said, hey, Daddy, I got this problem, but it needs $30 million to go away, you're going to be like, what? You're going to be like, all right, I need to know what's happening. And so it was awkward for Leon because Leon Rose extended Thibodeau less than 12 months ago. So if you have to go to your boss and say, hey, this guy isn't the guy for us anymore, but guess what? I extended him 12 months ago, then that looks bad on you. You know, Dolan's going to say, all right, why did you extend him? And so William Wesley was the guy driving the bus. He was like relentless from what I heard, and he was engaging Dolan in this situation. Now, people could say, all right, why did Dolan need to sit on in these meetings and whatever? You know, from what I see, I think it was relating to the, you know, hearing the players and just, you know, making sure that it's the right decision. You know, paying somebody 30 million to go away, it's not an easy decision. You know, it's a massive decision at the end of the day. Now, should have they been a bit more prepared? Maybe had a few more coaches lined up behind the scenes, you know, possibly. Dirty says, I felt like every offensive rebound we did give up led to a back-breaking shot. You know, the speed that they play at, man, it's different. It's insane. It's relentless. And I feel like, yeah, we just didn't adapt to their style enough. They say styles make fights, and yeah, the Knicks and the Pacers were arguably the most contrasting styles in all basketball. You know, Knicks a slow half court, small rotation, grind you down team, and the Pacers are the complete opposite. But it's kind of crazy how game one goes a different way. You know, we're looking at a game seven. Maybe the Knicks even closed the series out earlier. You know, I've heard a lot of people say, oh, if the Knicks had won game one, maybe the other games go different. And it doesn't necessarily mean that it gets to a game seven, which you never know. Obviously, this is, you know, nothing but hypothetical. But the way I see the series going, if the Knicks win game one, I feel like they're more than likely they're not suffered from that heartbreak and that, you know, that creative, that crazy shook of that outcome. They come back, they win game two. They ended up winning game three in Indiana anyway. Maybe they close the series out in five. That's possible as well with all the momentum. Chris Gotti, salute, says just hire Johnny Bryant at this point. I feel like they want somebody a bit more experienced, but as I said, Johnny Bryant can blow them away in the interviews, fam. He can win the job, I think, in the interviews. He has a leg up on all the other candidates because he knows, you know, he has the relationship with Wesley, with Leon. He can put together a hell of a PowerPoint presentation on these guys. Also, a year with Kenny Atkinson, yeah, it could have been a situation. Yeah, how crazy is it that one year makes, man? If Kenny Atkinson was 1 year ago, he was available. Kenny Atkinson would definitely love this job. You know, he was an assistant with the Knicks, responsible for Linsanity and so forth. I think Kenny Atkinson would have definitely taken this gig. Yeah, Eddie, I like this comment too. That's one of the frustrations I had was with Brunson bringing the ball up most of the time, being pressed full court. Halliburton allowed to, you know, get the ball up, no pressure as well. So I feel like playing guys out of position in their roles. I don't think Mikal Bridges was the best option for Halliburton, but certainly he was dropping back too far. You know, I think game five when he pressed up, the Knicks had more success as well. D. Grant says it was more the players that had the input into Thibs firing than anyone else. Yeah, that's something to look at as well. You know, Wesley's player oriented, the culture guy. You know, brought in for his relationships with the players. From what I've been told, like I said from a source, is that, you know, Wesley was the driver of it, but he rallied he rallied the players to also, you know, push that narrative, push it towards Dolan with Leon. And obviously Wesley's been beating that drum for a minute, but yeah, he did engage the players. Which players, I don't know. How many, I don't know, but it is disappointing in a way. But at the end of the day, you know, Thibs is a hard-nosed coach. It's a new NBA. It's so much easier to fire the coach now. I mean, look at, you know, so many coaches have won Coach of the Year and then they got let go. You know, it's not like the Knicks are the only one to fire a coach that's had success. You know, it's going to continue to happen. Mike Brown, you know, he got he got scapegoated. Taylor Jenkins got scapegoated. Like I said, the minute Dallas doesn't do anything, Jason Kidd's going to get scapegoated. They all know this. All these coaches, they know what they're getting into with this situation. That's why Kidd would leave Dallas in a heartbeat. And it's not just because Dallas is not desirable. It's the Knicks offer security. It would be a brand new 5-year contract. It would be a fresh start. You know, he would have more time. You know, a lot of factors, you know, coming into it. LB says, we all see what the direction of the league is going in. And a lot of these newer and younger guys are coming in as playoff contenders and sometimes even making the finals. Yeah, I feel like fit is everything. You know, you have to understand the roster, and that's what Thibodeau just didn't understand. You know, he was still trying to force a square peg in a round hole. He was playing this roster like it was the Hartenstein Devo Hart roster. You know, he was forcing it. When, you know, you brought in a McCall, who's not a Thibs kind of guy, Cat, you know, I don't think those two had a falling out, but I just don't think Karl Anthony Towns obviously is not a Thibs player, you know. So the roster got changed, and Leon and Thibodeau didn't change, you know, with the roster. You know, you got to be adaptable, fam. Dirty says Leon knows he's next. If this coach doesn't work out, he's going to get a sure thing. I'd like Jenkins. I haven't gauged. I don't know how, you know, how safe Leon is. I'm speculating by saying that I think Leon is very safe. I think Dolan's comfortable with the success so far. It's a collaborative situation. I think Wesley and Leon are a duo. I think Dolan had concerns over losing some of the MSG games, you know, some of the players as well, and that was purely Thibs related. I think he's comfortable with what Leon's doing. He's signed off on a lot of the trades and bringing Cat the payroll. And yeah, I think this team has a lot more time. I think Leon has at least a few years. But if there's gross underachievement, like we go out in the first round or something, you know, maybe then things will get more hot. But yeah, I definitely feel like Leon and West, they want a more safer option. Hence why they're looking at all these experienced guys. You know, I think if I know Leon and West well, it's relationships. Relationships is big for everything. Look no further than what they've done. You know, bringing Cat back to New Jersey, from New Jersey. Sorry, bringing in Thibs, who was, you know, a Leon guy. You know, Wesley, bringing in Kenny Payne. You know, those guys, and Woodson, and obviously Johnny Bryant. You know, everything's relationships for them. So I think they're going to go with somebody they trust, somebody who's, you know, within their circles. But they are doing a lot of due diligence. They're asking former players, "What do you think of this guy?" You know, they're interviewing pros about collegiate coaches, former players of collegiate coaches. They're doing all the due diligence about these guys, you know, so that when they do hire someone, I think that they are, a lot more safe about it. Um, Buzzer, what's up with Chris Boucher? Is he a free agent? Could we get him for the MLE? Yeah, we did mention that last show. Chris Boucher is a free agent, fam. I'm not sure if he's restricted or unrestricted, but I think he would be a solid fit. I think he would be around the MLE or the taxpayer MLE. Yeah, I like his skill set, but I just don't think it's a priority for us right now. I think if you've got guys like Cat, Mitch, Huck, I think we could be looking at some more perimeter defense, some shooting um, from that position. But let's see how it plays out. We'll continue to follow the free agency after the draft and how that plays out. Freeway salute, what's good? Now, I know one of the key stories from today is Mike Woodson. Let's talk a bit more about Mike Woodson. So, Mike Woodson has been out of the game for a minute. Obviously, was with us as an assistant. And like I said earlier, relationships, there we go, comfortability. But Woodson's offense, that doesn't really impress me. Defensively, I think would be great. But I think we need to get somebody more modern in terms of an offensive scheme. That, we could do that from within a coordinator. We'll see how that plays out. But yeah, I respect Woody. He's kind of like a high floor, lower ceiling guy again. Somebody who's been an NBA coach more recently. I'll definitely put Mike Brown, Taylor Jenkins ahead. Even Terry Stotts as well. Ron Simmons salutes as JB all the way. Let's see. We're hearing some noise that his name isn't as hot as some of the other ones, but I think Wesley's probably a guy pushing for his guy, Johnny Bryant. So I think he'll definitely get an interview. He'll have a chance to wow them. I think with his experience, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity for Johnny Bryant. He's been here, went to Cleveland. I think this will be the closest he gets to getting a job. He missed out on the Phoenix job as well. Johnny says, I remember Chris Boucher was on fire versus the New York Knicks from the perimeter. Man, drop coverage, defensive schemes, having nightmares right now. Look, one thing I want to say is I know Karl Anthony Towns was infuriating defensively at times, but call me delusional. I think, there's a chance we could get more out of Cat defensively. I think, whether that was communicating better, a more simpler scheme, switching, obviously not doing drop coverage. I think we are going to find out a lot of things about how much of it was Thibodeau and how much of it is just, he got the best out of that guy. But I do think that Karl Anthony Towns can't be any worse, in terms of where to be on the floor. He should not be in drop coverage. There should be a lot more switching. He showed that he could switch out, and guard some guys. So did Huck Porty. I see videoing surface of Huck Porty's game against Scotty Barnes against the Raptors. Man, that was a phenomenal effort from Huck Porty, shuffling his feet and staying out on the perimeter. He could have been a guy that could have played against Boston and against Indiana as well. And he's going to get that first chance as a backup, assuming Mitch and Cat will start together. What do you guys think? I'd love to know your thoughts. Let's say opening night. Let's say for argument's sake, it's the same roster. Are you starting Cat and Mitch together? Or are you going to be mindful of Mitch's durability and whatever and have him off the bench and have Karl Anthony Towns as the starter at the 5? let's assume Hart's on the bench and we upgrade the starting spot with a shooter like Gary Trent or somebody else. And let's assume Cat's at the 5, OG's at the 4, the shooters at the 3, McCall at the 2, and Brunson at the 1, Hart and Deuce off the bench. Would you go that way? Or would you say, no, Mitchell Robinson, Cat has to stay together and, go the double big lineups, man, force the issue like we saw in the postseason. It's been a renaissance for the double bigs. Look at Steven Adams in the Houston series, man. He was absolutely eating them up, killing Golden State until they had to foul him. So, it's definitely a new movement where I think it'll maximize its potential, but you've got to be able to hit free throws. You've got to be able to win the rebounding, and obviously teams are going to try to push the pace. But I feel like you can't exhaust it. If something's working, you can't just spam it. You do it for maybe like 5-6 minutes at a time, and I think you got to be adaptable. Yeah, the comebacks were a concern in terms of falling down, giving up the basketball. Jason says Hukporty's durability is a big question mark. He's already had 2 major injuries early in his career. Yeah, I won't lie, Jason. I've been thinking the same. I've been thinking, okay, how much can Hukporty give us as a durable piece? I know ability-wise is there, but my optimism is that, Casey Smith is here, and he would have seen a hell of a lot of meniscus sort of injury concerns with the bigs, and hopefully he can, develop a plan with Hukporty where, maybe some of the things he's doing or not doing can help him out. The evidence is there with OG Anunoby, one of his most durable seasons. So, yeah, hopefully all the injury woes behind Hukporty. McCullough seemed to be cool the way he finished the season. Had a little nagging injury for a couple of weeks, but he bounced back from that. So it does seem like, yeah, the major injuries from McCullough, Hukporty are behind them for now. I think Summer League is going to be a big opportunity to play heavy minutes and see if they can, put a case forward for the new coach. In terms of who that coach is going to be, we don't know. I communicated via a report in Australia that an assistant coach has been appointed for Summer League, but no word yet on who is going to run Summer League. I would not think it's going to be Dice. I think he'll be gone, although there's been no formal communication just yet. Right. I mean, heck, why not just give it to Rick Brunson or Pat? You've got so many people in the organization. Let Patrick Ewing run Summer League. Let Rick Brunson run Summer League. These guys have been around. What's good, Wayne? I'd start Mitch, but he's not playing any more than 25, and Hukporty would back up Mitch. Yep. Yeah, I like that. Look, I think Mitchell Robinson is a starter in the league, right? He's one of like 5 rim protectors in the league that, there's nobody else that you would pick ahead of him as a starting 5 defensively. It allows Cat to sort of come up on the perimeter a bit more and not being dropped. It allows Cat to hopefully be a trailing 3 guy. But one thing I need to look out for is what's the trade market for a Walker Kessler. Reports that Utah are more willing than ever before to move on from the young big Walker Kessler. He could be a nice future insurance policy, in terms of that. Yeah, I think a lot of that is going to be centered around Cat. Michael Drake, what's good? Cat at the 4, Robinson at the 5. So, yep, 2 for 2. You guys are start Mitch. Hive in the building. Chosen and loving it. Says Mitch and Cat starting. Huck in the rotation next season. Yep. At the least, Huck Porty can get any of the precious minutes. You know, maybe not play every game, but like if we're matching up against a bigger rotation, Huck Porty needs to be playing, on a semi-regular basis. Michael says Cat's naturally a 4, not a 5. Cardiac, why does the postseason magic happen for the opposing teams at MSG? I feel like they're just comfortable, everyone wants to show out. It's not as intimidating as it once was. I've been trying to wrap my head around it. I mean, you could go back so many decades, double nickel game, Kobe Bryant's games, Reggie Miller. It's just not as intimidating as some people want it to be. My only thing is we just need to look within. Players need to understand that the opposing teams want to come in to the Garden and have their best performance, and we need to be up for it. We need to match that energy all the time, and it's the players that can fight back, not the crowd. The crowd's there to have fun, enjoy the spectacle. But at the end of the day, the players can't have letdowns. They can't come out slow. They can't give the other team juice. They can't come out of the third quarter half asleep. It starts from within. The players have to play more with more pride. One of the things that did frustrate me with this roster is there's just a lot of same rhetoric. Hart saying, the lack of urgency, lack of communication, just the same kind of thing said over and over. And I feel like it did frustrate some of the players. There was some players-only meetings. Let's hope that doesn't need to happen from next season. Obviously, when you're dealing with a few more defensive liabilities like Cat and Brunson, it can frustrate some of the other guys. So they do need to get on the same page quickly. Hopefully the continuity aspect will help these guys having gone on a deep postseason run. Because, I don't want to see any finger pointing next season, right? As Brunson says, they lose as a team, they win as a team. And they need to handle their business in that locker room, right? Communicate, but hopefully a change of scheme will make things easier for these guys as well. Like I said, a lot of the things go back to Thibodeau. Right? You're not playing to the strengths of Karl Anthony Towns. Right? He's not a player that needs to be in drop coverage. He's not good at that. You don't need to play him in drop. So let's see how that goes. Look, these players are going to have to wear some accountability. They know that the coach got fired, and whether you were for Thibs or against Thibs, that's a black mark on their record, because at the end of the day, they made the Eastern Conference Finals and they got their coach fired, and so they should come back with a chip. Jason V says kids' offensive schemes can be stagnant, and he also is known to have a very questionable rotations. I think a lot of that could be roster based, but he does like to let the play unfold, and that hopefully we can get in a more offensive minded coordinator as well. But I think they just like kids' IQ, his ability to adjust to lineups, what the other coach is doing and those things. But they seem to be very high on kids, so they've done a lot of research. Michael says yes. Patrick Ewing, yes, he has experience. I think sadly the boat has sailed with Pat, but I would have loved to see him get an opportunity, from within. Uh, David says, I'm worried about the defense regressing under the new coach. Um, I think it's less likely, in my opinion, because I feel like we're going to strengthen the roster somewhat as step one. Step two, I feel like they've obviously learned a lot, making a deep postseason run. They know what is really worked, what didn't work. I feel like that continuity could help. The other thing is, I just think more flexibility from a new coach, more malleability in terms of like, okay, don't go drop coverage, switch everything. There was just so many times where I just was confused about what we were doing. If I'm confused, you're confused. The players are definitely confused because it was like game one, we're switching. Next game was like back to drop coverage again, um, kind of thing. And so I feel like you've just got to adapt real quick. And that's why we're in this situation, why Thibodeau got fired. Because you win round two against Boston a certain way. That's a different opponent with a different style. The moment that series is over, you have to think about Indiana as a completely different challenge, a complete different opponent, and different things are going to work. So you have to be really quick to adjust. And obviously that's where the scouting comes in. Um, Thibodeau was just more of a one-trick pony defensively, with Mitch saving his bacon a lot of the time. But unfortunately, Indiana were a really bad opponent for the double big lineups, in my opinion. Ultimately, game 4 and game 6, did us in Indiana. There's only one way they were going to try to beat us, and that's push the pace, push it, and run a track meet. And Thibodeau went with the double big lineups in game 4 and game 6, and we got ran out of the gym. So I would have liked to see a better adjustment with that. Double big lineups against Boston, different story. Jason says the CBA definitely sabotaged the Knicks' success. I said this earlier, and I'll sort of wrap up on this note from tonight and just talk about the CBA. I feel like the Knicks were in a situation where they were comfortable with the moves they had lined up. Cat, Bridges. One thing that I feel like happened unexpectedly was the OG free agency. There was multiple reports that he was sort of a little bit discontent with the role and the bringing in Bridges, and then he was sort of rumblings came out from Philadelphia that they were going to offer him the max, and I think that was maybe used to drive up the price. Now the Knicks, when they traded for OG, they were fully expected to retain him and bring him back. Obviously, you don't trade away RJ and quickly, so there was the pressure to re-sign OG. But I feel like the number sort of got inflated a bit. They weren't expecting to pay 42 million, and then they pushed them right up against the second apron. If OG got re-signed for 35, 38, that would have given the Knicks some wiggle room to flesh out the rest of the depth on the roster. So I feel like the unexpected bump in the road was the OG free agency, but it worked out the way it did. We had to overpay 42 million for what we expected. It doesn't look like an overpay right now, but essentially it's hamstrung the ability to add more talent. Add more talent. You're talking about maybe a different exception that the Knicks could have used. Like I said, we wouldn't have had to do all that cap gymnastics with PJ Tucker and that last season. The Knicks would have had about 10 million wiggle room last season with the OG free agency. But it is what it is, man. His agent did great work, did the best for his client. But I feel like, the OG 42 million, the free agency, that's where it sort of, for the front office, that things got a little bit off track, a little bit off the rails. But let's see what we can do now. maybe they do need to trade a major salary to even things out. Maybe they run it all back and make some moves on the margins. But with that said, let me refresh the score right now and find out what's happening in Game 3 in Indiana. We got the Pacers 79, the Thunder 76, halfway through the third. So Indiana with a narrow lead and could take a series lead in this one, man. So I'm going to catch the fourth quarter of this one, guys. But as always, appreciate you for rocking out with us on this stream, talking about the Knicks coaching situation. A lot of restlessness out here, but the Knicks know what they're doing, have patience. They're doing their due diligence and working down their list of experienced guys that they want. Obviously, they're going to end up with someone that they feel like is the best candidate for this fit, right? But the draft is around the corner. Free agency, summer league, things are going to keep buzzing here. And stay locked in, guys. I'll be live again on Friday night. Just a couple of days, we'll be back to discuss the latest and talk about any progress made with the latest reports coming out. As always, appreciate you. Replay gang, salute. And let's go New York Knicks, orange and blue. That's what we do. Peace, everyone. Have a great night.